What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because if where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Can't you guess?
Well, it could be on a spectrum from mass sterilisation to you know, greater availability of contraception. I don't know what your views are as to what can be done about it.
Well, I think it might be described as voluntary family limitation.
I grew up in the 1960s, watching those TV commercials with those starving kids in Africa who stared vacantly at the camera with sad eyes and distended bellies. And in 6th grade, my Glee Club teacher, Mr. Collins, had us change the words in this song we were singing. 3 billion people in the world, to 4 billion people in the world. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe that the population was so big. And I was even more shocked because no one else in the class seemed at all disturbed by this fact. A couple days later, I told my friend Susie Hollander that because there seemed to be too many people in the world for it to handle, that I wasn't going to have any kids. And she looked at me and she replied that she was going to have 3. This is unsustainable.
I am not a bigot. Mother Earth is dying because I exist. I trust these philanthropist eugenicists who just want what's best for me. I am an empowered and free global citizen.
A war over resources? Or will it stop growing because people choose to have smaller families? And by smaller families, I mean one-child families. And this is where people start getting nervous talking about overpopulation and population issues because they're scared that I'm going to take away their rights to have children. But I don't want to take people's rights away. I want to give people rights.
Hi, we're Natasha and Luca, that vegan couple from YouTube and other social media.
The time has come to make animal rights history.
Join us in London on October 7 for the Animal Rebellion.
It's a 2-week disruption, but you can come for any time you're able to.
Taking direct action for animals to disrupt business as usual and demand serious change from governments is what the animal victims and the planet desperately need.
Hey everyone, we're in Lisbon, Portugal. We are disrupting in a supermarket, or a shopping centre I should say, with lots of restaurants around us. We have about 23 activists with us tonight and we're playing the screams of animals.
If we all sterilize ourselves and give the animals human rights, we can all have equal animal rights together and eat plant-based fortified kibble to stop the #climate crisis and achieve #climate justice with the good grown-ups at the big banks, governments, and global corporations.
You know, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade up in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So you, of course,
well, that's an interesting thing you just said.
Our Earth is warming up and our oceans are rising. Extreme weather is wrecking millions of lives.
From California to the Amazon, our forests are burning. We are in a climate emergency.
We cannot let this happen on our watch. Up to 1 million species are becoming extinct because of mankind's actions, and time is running out.
History shows us that when enough people rise up and demand change, those in power have no choice but to act.
Millions of people around the world are taking to the streets on a climate strike, demanding our leaders listen to the science and act.
We must take back power. That means voting for leaders who care about the future of our planet. Join in supporting environmental movements like Greenpeace or Fridays for Future, a global youth movement inspired by Greta Thunberg.
And doing what we can to live in a greener lifestyle, like cutting out meat and dairy in your diet and reducing plastic use.
I mean, the population's going to have to stop growing at some point, so why not stop now? Instead of wishing that some invention or technology will save us that doesn't even exist yet, and we're not even sure works. So for everyone to have quality of life, the number of humans on Earth needs to go down. And I believe that it needs to go down to 2 billion people, which sounds radical because there are 7 billion people on the planet today, but it's actually the world population of just 80 years ago. So let's change our idea of what the ideal family looks like. And let's not be afraid to talk about overpopulation, because it is not about taking rights away from people. It is about giving opportunities to women, children, and future generations.
Model of technocracy was created in the 1930s at Columbia University, of all places. And scientists and engineers got together in the heat of the Great Depression, figuring that capitalism was dead. They were very upset with politicians, as many people were in that day. They pretty much blamed them for everything that was going on. And so they thought it was up to them to create a brand new economic model that the world had never seen. It would be a resource-based economic system versus a price-based economic system. And they believed that it would be so sufficient and so well engineered that it would obviate the need for a political system whatsoever. And so even back in that day, they called for the abolition of Congress and courts and other things like that. Well, these won't need that, because there will be no conflict, because we will run everything and it'll just be hunky-dory. And there was a book written back in 1932 at the same time, by the way, called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley.
That's right.
And basically it was looking into the soul of technocracy. And anybody that's read that book recently will recollect that there was no political system whatsoever. So the original technocracy model pretty much fizzled out by the end of the middle of the 1940s anyway, as World War II kind of revived our economic system and the machinery of got back working again, unemployment went down. And but in that interim period, there were well over 500,000 card-carrying, dues-paying members of the technocracy movement in North America. They were huge in Canada, but they were really big in the United States as well. And they had meetings all over the country, actually. People were so hungry for something new that it offered them kind of a spark of hope. And even though it was really a utopian idea, which never works, ever,
That's right.
people saw enough hope that they thought, well, maybe this could really happen. You know, maybe technocracy would really work. But they never really kind of thought through to the logical end of it, where it would wind up, and it would be very ugly in the end. And as the book Brave New World suggested, scientific dictatorship was the ultimate outcome of technocracy. And that was pretty much depicted in that book. It was a fiction book, of course, but he got the idea from somewhere, and we know he got it from the president of Columbia University, Nicholas Murray Butler, who spent a lot of time in Europe hobnobbing with Mussolini and people of that nature. So the idea had been floating around Europe especially. So it went out of favor for some years, and it resurfaced again as an idea around 1970 with the publication of a book by Zbigniew Brzezinski. The title was called Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. Okay. And Brzezinski, a political scientist, guess where, at Columbia University, just by coincidence, I'm sure. He basically rehashed the technocracy idea, called it the Technotronic Era. Same thing, different name. But in his Technotronic Era, he postulated that the end game, the end nature of society was going to be the Technotronic Era, which again was technocracy, resource-based economic system. We know it by other names, by the way, today. Other marketing names. Sustainable development is one that the United Nations uses. Green New Deal is another one that AOC and some politicians use here. And actually, that's kind of being implemented right now with the current administration. And then you have names like the Great Reset that the World Economic Forum is talking about right now, Klaus Schwab. The Great Reset is sustainable development / technocracy. It's the rule of society by advanced science, engineering, etc. It is distinctly different in character from other political systems that are more price-based, including, of course, free market economics. You can forget that. That's completely out the window. So this resource-based economic system is known by a number of names today. In the United States, they instead of calling it Agenda 21, which is United Nations name, they call it Smart Growth. Same stuff, just different names. Recognizing that, however, back in the early 1970s, when Zbigniew Brzezinski got together with David Rockefeller, they formed this group called the Trilateral Commission. The stated goal of the Trilateral Commission was to create a new international economic order. We were not sure what that meant back then, but we knew it was some kind of rearranging of the deck chairs, at least on the Titanic. So, we wrote about that a lot, myself and my co-author, Anthony Sutton, and we produced books on the Trilateral Commission trying to describe what they were intending to do. And it didn't occur to me until years later that what they were really attempting to do with this new international economic order was literally to create a new international economic order, brand new, something altogether different than what we had known historically as the free market economic system in all of its various flavors. And so by the time 2000 rolled around, at least, this technocracy ideology was beginning to really take hold. We see it especially in China, where you have a fully engineered economic system now. It's not, it kind of has some trappings of free market economics, and then it has some trappings of communism and the flag and the symbol and the hammer, and but it's a horse of a different color. And those who study China today, and they look at the social credit scoring system and the 600 million cameras that are taking everybody's picture on a continuous basis, and they look at the, what's happening with the persecution of the Uyghur population. And we look at things like their statement 3 years ago that they're going to simply relocate 300 million farmers into the cities and take over the land for the sake of factory farming. These types of things are the epitome of economic engineering and social engineering, and that's really kind of the heartbeat of technocracy.
No,
so we see China exporting its technocracy to the whole world. We see them, they're very active in South America, very active in Africa. Of course, in Asia, it's just, they're just exporting it everywhere they can in Asia, like lickety-split. And there's also a huge influence in Europe right now and in the United States. And much of the technology that China is using was actually invented in the United States. It was developed here. But it was illegal to do those things back, say, 15 years ago. It's just patently illegal. So they exported it to China. China was happy to accept it, and as an autocratic system, they had no problem implementing it on the spot. Hey, look, laws are no problem. We can do whatever we want. And so they did. And then they perfected the technology and they re-imported it back into the United States. This is what we see happening today. And it's pretty much, it's getting pretty obvious to people right now that this claws of scientific dictatorship are digging into our flesh. And there's nothing anybody can do about it because there's no people behind it. Not really, there is, but it's very difficult to get your hands on them. So you have this, these big tech companies today that are for instance, like the Googles and the Twitters and the Facebooks and so on, that are exerting, and Amazon, that are exerting control, economic control over society, that already in many cases is greater control than the government can offer.